Do you know where you're headed?
Hi. Are you one of my moms? Yes. Jackie, thank you so much for coming. Mom is sitting right here, so please sit anywhere. Madam Chair, welcome.
Good afternoon, ladies and some gentlemen. I'm really thrilled you're all here. It's a little bit after 3, and I would love to get started. Because, as you know, the Oscars are tonight. And I think they start at 5. So I would really like for us to be able to, well, I've got something else planned, quite honestly. Yarkin, she's not here yet. Okay. Well, hopefully she'll make it. We're almost all here, but we're going to go get started. So, welcome to our Torah Fun Tea event. This is our second tea event. Last year we were outdoors, and this year, fortunately, we are able to be indoors. I thank you all for coming here to support Torah Fund and for honoring Barbara. I'd like to introduce some of our clergy and educators. Rabbi Brian Schuldenfrei is table 5. He's good. Okay. So, there he is. Say hi. Cantor Judy Dubin-Aronoff. Here's Rabbi Brian Schuldenfrei. Julie Schnitzer-Levine, who is our Director of Supplemental Education. Our synagogue president, Lena LeBeau. And hopefully soon, Rabbi Jessica Yarkin will be here as well. Now I'd like to welcome Marcy Melton, who's the Women's League Torah Fund Vice President of the Pacific Southwest region. She's just going to say a few words to greet us. Thank you.
Thank you to the women of Adat and your tireless Torah Fund proponent, Amy Mazer, and your president, Melinda Marcus, for inviting me to be together, biyachad, with you for this luxurious Torah Fund tea event. It's unbelievable. I bring you greetings on behalf of Debbie Kaner-Goldich, our Women's League International President, Barbara Esring, our International Torah Fund Chair, and Carol Madvig, our PSW President. For the first time in 80 years, Torah Fund has no new campaign, no new theme, and no new pin. Despite that challenge, as of March 9th, we've raised $685,000, only 12% down from last year at this time. Our Spaces campaign totals $122,000, over halfway to our goal of $200,000. And there are new opportunities to get involved in getting to your Torah Fund goal. As of 2 years ago, eCards was launched on the Torah Fund website. For only $5 per recipient, you can send cards for holidays and any other occasion that you'd like, and the money goes towards your sisterhood goal. Also, this year being the 80th year of Torah Fund, you can go online to make a donation and check the box that says that you'd like to give an extra $80. So that's another way for you to support Torah Fund. So a major reason I give to Torah Fund is because of your loquacious rabbi, Brian Schuldenfrei. When he was a young rabbi at my synagogue, Sinai Temple, he made a big difference in my family's life. He came up with all kinds of innovative programming for children, which my daughter loved. He gave us tickets to the circus, which was an amazing experience for her. And he was the first member of the clergy to call me when my father passed away unexpectedly, and he gave me great comfort. So I give to Torah Fund because we need more people like your rabbi. And so it makes me feel good to provide educational opportunities to our future Jewish leaders. I'd like to give a shout out to Leila Jacoby, where'd she go? There she is, who gives so much of herself to our region. Thank you. And of course, a hearty mazel tov to Barbara, who I just found out is a fellow upstate New Yorker, although albeit at the other side of the state. And congratulations on your Chaye Olam honor. Thank you all so much for your support and generous donations, and thank you again for inviting me today.
Thank you, Marcy. So, Julie, will you come up and give the Devar Torah, please?
Thank you so much, Amy. I'm honored that I was asked to do this today. And this actually works out well because I know that our other Torah Fund speaker later will be speaking on next Shabbat's Parsha. I'm going to hop in the Wayback Machine and I'm going to talk about this past Shabbat's Parsha, which was Parshat Shmini. This is actually one of my favorite parshiot for all sorts of weird reasons. But one of the things that Parshat Shmini gives us is the unequivocal list of the animals that are and are not kosher. Not just a few broad categories, but name by name by name. If you are ever curious about whether or not a specific animal is kosher to eat, just go back to Parshat Shmini and it will tell you, because there are no new animals. But the fact that there is so much emphasis put on what actually we are allowed to put into our mouths reminds me of a story. So once there was a village, and this village was known everywhere as the most kosher village that there was, because there were these two folks who lived in it, and that was their purpose, was making sure that their kashrut was unimpeachable. You could not doubt it for anything. Every restaurant, every home, every cafe, everything, the kashrut of this village was just to a T bar none, and everybody knew that. However, they had to go traveling, these two folks, one day, and they had to go by train. So of course, they made sure to pack all the provisions that they needed, and they had plenty for their train trip, so they didn't have to worry about the club card, this card, did somebody else want this? Because they had all their needs taken care of because they had made sure that the kashrut on the food they were going to consume was perfect. And they got to their destination and they were out of food and they were a little peckish, as one gets when they get off a train. And they went and they saw a cafe right there. And it had a sign in the front designating it as a kosher cafe. So they said, okay, we'll go in. And they walk in fairly unassumingly. And they get to the counter, and they go, you there who runs this place. I see you have a sign, but I need you to tell me everything about your kashrut. Who is your mashgiach, and how are your knives cleaned, and how are they sharpened, and how is everything clean, and is this separate, and is that separate, and on, and on, and on, and on, and on, until they were satisfied. And just as they were about to place their order, small voice from the back, a little man sitting in the back by a stove, says, "Gentlemen, our guests, it's wonderful that you're so concerned about what you're about to put into your mouths, but have you even for a moment considered what comes out of them?" Oh, Kurt. What comes out of our mouths? Part of the beauty of kashrut is it makes every time that we eat an exercise in mindfulness. We are given parameters by which we can say, does this meet this criteria? What works for me? Where are my boundaries? And everything gets to have forethought And if we so choose, we can even bookend it with a lovely blessing on the backside as well. But what comes out of our mouths? And what's interesting is the things that are harmful that come out of our mouths sometimes aren't the things that are harmful to others, but it's the things that come out of our mouths that are harmful and injurious to ourselves. I saw a meme the other day, and it said, what would you do if you were offered $10,000, but you had to give $5,000 to the person you hate most in this world? And the response was, well, sure, I'd love $15,000. It's the things that we say about ourselves that do harm, that, how does one make apology for that? It's the negative narratives. It's the self-deprecating comments and jokes. It's the ways in which we just try to kind of like push aside or diminish or, keep that boundary around ourselves. I once had someone who said to me, tell my friend Julie I don't like it when she speaks like that about herself. And I've heard it said before, maybe we should all try harder to speak to and about ourselves the way we would speak to or about a cherished friend or a loved one. But one of the things that we say sometimes that actually does the most damage is, I'm sorry. There have been many studies done that reveal that women say I am sorry at a disturbingly high rate, disproportionate to men, but more often than not, when we don't mean I'm sorry. Because what is heard is, I'm sorry, I am taking up space and time. I'm sorry that I am asserting myself. I'm sorry that I have whatever it is. And this isn't about downplaying a heartfelt and sincere apology or an amends where it is due. And of course, as an educator, when we speak to the kids about Teshuvah and about Yom Kippur, we tell them that it's not just enough to say, I'm sorry, or certainly not just sorry, that it's about identifying what it is you did wrong, how it affected the other person, a change in your behavior, and a commitment to do better. It's not that kind of I'm sorry that I'm talking about. Because I'm sorry, very often when it comes out of the mouths of women, is not only overused, but it's misused. And what it does is it begins to diminish the rest of what comes out of our mouths, especially when it truly deserves merit. Men, by the way, do this, but their threshold for what is and isn't always deemed sorry-worthy is different, and that's okay. By the way, some women also tend to that side as well. And I can, by the way, sit here and tell you all the reasons that, you can agree with me, you cannot. But something that I learned very recently is there's a lot of other ways and words that can be used instead of I'm sorry. And one of them, oddly enough, is thank you. And so I will close by saying that I know that somebody in here may not jive with what I've just spoken, with my Torah today. And some people in here, I would hope they aren't, but might be offended. But what I will say is thank you for giving me this opportunity, for listening to me, and for being here today to truly celebrate the importance of women, of our words, and the space that we occupy proudly in this world.
Thank you, Julie. Thank you very much. And here's our Rabbi Jessica Yarkin and her baby. So glad you could join us. Those who want to wash, the wash stations are not set up, but we do have, they got it? Oh, okay. So thank you. The wash station is over there, yes? So go ahead, because we're going to do the motzi in a minute. And I'm going to ask our Women of Adat president to come up to greet us and to say the motzi, lead us in the motzi. So you can talk, and then when they're done washing.
Good afternoon. First of all, thank you, Amy, for putting this beautiful tea together for all of us. I know how hard you worked to put this on, so thank you. And thank you, everyone, for helping us celebrate Barbara Vaccai and her much-deserved Chayei Olam Award. Barbara is not only an integral part of this synagogue and of Women of Adat, but she's become indispensable in my life. I probably email her more often than my own family members, so thank you. She has a very kind and generous heart, a positive, no-nonsense attitude, and I challenge any person in this room to track down a missing check faster than Barbara. She's very fast. I'm not only fortunate to serve with Barbara on the executive board of Women of Adat, but I also get to work with her on the Women's Passover celebration, a lovely evening of song, artwork, desserts, and wine. What? When's that, Melinda? Thanks for asking. It's on April 6th. It's at April 6th, 7:30. How do I RSVP? Great question. You can RSVP online at adatariel.org. Do I have to be a member? Not at all. Everyone's welcome to attend for just $36 a person or help sponsor the event for $72. Okay, so my shameless plug is finished. All right. I did want to wish a very big mazel tov to Barbara. You very, very much deserve. Okay. So I will say the Hamotzi, Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, Hamotzi lechem min haaretz.
So I invite you now to help yourselves to your tea treats. I guess the plates, yeah, the plates are over there. So you have your sandwiches over there and your desserts are over there. And there's tea on the table, there's hot water on the table. The cups, the colorful cups, are the paper cups. For those of you who are watching live stream, hello. So we're going to take a little bit of a break here and have our tea sandwiches and tea. So I would say maybe 20 minutes until we resume the programming, give or take. Thank you. Glad you joined us.
Hello, everyone. We are going to do Birkat Hamazon. So Amy said I should say what I always say, which is, if you're done eating and you're ready to bench, great. If you are not done eating, pause for a moment. Let's do Birkat Hamazon together, and then you have the chance to make another bracha over the rest of your food. So then you get in another bracha for the day, right? What could be better? Except for seeing this one's new baby in person. Okay, so Rabbi Yarkin, how nice to be up here again with you.
Likewise, Kanta Arano.
So shall we begin? There are birchonim in the middle of your table that look like this, and we will begin at number 2 on the inside.
Come, let us bless.
Okay.
Rabotai nevarech, Yehi Shem Adonai mevarach me'ata v'ad olam.
Yehi Shem Adonai mevorach me'ata v'ad olam. Birshut Marnan v'Rabbanan v'Rabotai nevarech Eloheinu she'achalnu mishelo.
Eloheinu she'achalnu mishelo. U'b'tvo chayinu.
Baruch Eloheinu she'achalnu mishelo. U'v'tuvo chayinu. Baruch hu baruch shemo. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Mazan et haolam kulo betuvo. Bechein bechesed u'rachamim rachamim. Hu noten lechem lechol basar ki le'olam chasdo. U'v'tuvo agadol. Tamid lo chasalanu ve'al yachsalanu mazon le'olam va'ed ba'avur shemo hagadol ki wasanu farnes la'akol u'metiv la'akol u'mechin mazon le'chol b'ri'otav asher bahara baruch atah Adonai Hazan et hakol. Number 5 at the bottom. Kakatu v'yachalta v'sarata u'verachta et Adonai Elohecha al haaretz hatova asher natan lach. Baruch atah Adonai al haaretz v'al hamazon. Number 8. Uvenei Yerushalayim, Ira Kodesh b'meira v'yameinu, Baruch atah Adonai, Boneh berachamav Yerushalayim, Amen. Number 16, using the word not in parentheses, the word is Magdil. Here we go. Magdil Yeshua Malko v'yoseh chesed limshicho leDavid u'lezaro adolam oseh shalom bimromav hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'yimeru amen. How beautiful and wonderful to sing in harmony with you again.
Likewise, Kanta Arano. And Mazel Tov to Barbara.
Mazel Tov.
Woo!
Okay, so while you're finishing up your desserts, I would like to proceed with the presentation of past recipients who are teeing with us today. Is that such a word? Yes. If you're playing golf, it's you tee off. Okay. Okay, I'm going to start with the past Chaye Olam honorees. And back in 1993, we honored Janet Farber. And in the year 2000, we honored Carmi Monsher. And 2001, we honored Beverly Barrick. And after her came our beloved Leela Jacoby. And then in 2007, we honored Helen Friedman. 2010, Susie Katz. Wait. And in 2012, Ray Berger. And 2014, I was honored. And then in 2015, we honored our synagogue president, Lena LeBeau. And in 2016, we honored our cantor, Judy Dubin-Aronoff. And 2019, I didn't see, is Rosalie here? There she is, Rosalie Pachersky. And then last year, we honored Joette Labinger. Now, the past Kol Isha honorees, 2009, we honored Karen Gale, also a past sisterhood president, and 2010, Christine Prell, also past president, and 2013, Jennifer Kaplan, and in 2015, our current Women of Adat president, Melinda Marcus. Okay, so now it gives me great pleasure to introduce our own rabbinic intern and guest speaker, Cheryl Stone. Cheryl is an educator, artist, and spiritual guide. She's completing her rabbinic ordination at the Ziegler School of Rabbinic Studies in Los Angeles. Upon her completion of her master's in Jewish education, through a joint program between the Pardes Institute of Jewish Studies in Jerusalem and Hebrew College in Boston, Cheryl moved with her husband to teach Tanakh and Judaics in Cleveland, Ohio. There they began their family and then moved to LA in order for Cheryl to follow her calling into the rabbinate. In addition to sharing her life experiences and wealth of knowledge in text, she enjoys gardening, doing art projects, or playing in the park with her 5-year-old daughter. Please welcome to the podium soon-to-be Rabbi Cheryl Stone.
Hi, this is so funny. I'm used to saying Shabbat Shalom, so I'm like, wait, there's something missing. Hi, thank you all for having me. This is so lovely. I love teas. This is like the most amazing thing. My mother came out to visit back last fall, and there's a tea room somewhere east of us. Sorry, somewhere east, in Pasadena. And it was amazing. It was so cool. It was like this room filled with all sorts of, like, it was this mishmash. They had some English tea sets and some Russian tea sets and some French tea sets. They didn't care. But it was wonderful. And it was my first time taking my daughter to a tea. And so my daughter was thrilled. My mom was thrilled. So I'm feeling them here right now. They would be really thrilled. So thank you all for having me. I want to start off and, of course, say congratulations to Barbara. And I want to mention, some of you may know this and some of you don't, how I got to Adat Ariel. So Julie's laughing because, yeah, here it is. Is that better? Yeah, I was realizing. So Julie and I have known each other since we were about 6 years old. And I knew I was coming out here to go to rabbinical school. Julie said, you have to come live in the valley. It's better in the valley. And I said, okay, sure, I'll trust you on this. And then she said, Adat Ariel is amazing. You're gonna love Adat Ariel. I said, okay. So I had a newborn. I was trying to figure all this out. I was up, 4 o'clock in the morning, breastfeeding and searching and trying to figure out where to live. And Julie was amazing. She said to me, find the places, I will go look at them. And she did, and she helped us find our apartment, and that's where we live, and so thank you. And it's just amazing, like, full circle that, So I want to talk a little bit about this phrase, this quote that you all are familiar with, which is that people plan and God laughs. And I think that there is no more time that we in our generation feel this more strongly than right now. We've all become very present to this idea that we might make plans, but God has other designs on our lives. And for me, this is very true. If you had told me when I was 20 that I was someday going to become a rabbi, I would have laughed in your face. There was no way. My life did not look anything like a rabbi's life. I was, as Amy said, I went to college and pursued my love, my absolute love, which was theater. And I found myself behind the scenes building costumes. I made amazing costumes. I made huge Shakespearean costumes, these gorgeous dresses, and I loved what I did. And you could not have convinced me that I was going to do anything else for the rest of my life. And I worked in theaters around the country, and I landed in the San Francisco Bay Area, doing exactly what I wanted to do. I was taking someone's design and turning it into a three-dimensional, wearable piece of art. I was thrilled. I was also working 120 hours a week. I was sleeping in the costume shop. And for the most part, I didn't mind. I had no idea that that was a lot. I was just passionate, and I was really loving it. And then one day, I stepped outside, and I realized there was daylight. So I took a break, what I thought was a break, never intending that that was going to be the end of my theater career. And I slowly fell out of love with theater, and I found myself involved in a spiritual dance community in San Francisco. I remember the first time I was there, it was in a church called St. John's, which is this pseudo-Gothic cathedral. Big rose windows, high ceilings, beautiful hardwood floors. And at midnight, they gathered the 300 people there, and they had everyone sit down, and they had everyone close their eyes. And I went, I'm from Florida, we don't close our eyes. And then they had everyone ohm, and I'm like, no, definitely don't ohm. And I was like, this is crazy. You guys are, okay, I like you're kind of crazy. This is fun, but you guys are crazy. And eventually, this became a big part of my life. It was something that I really, really looked forward to. And at some point, I became part of the leadership, and I looked around, and I said, there's about 15% of the people here who declare themselves to be Jewish, and yet are actively seeking a connection to the divine. Let me back up one step. This spiritual dance community, their whole premise was that through ecstatic dance, you could have a divine connection. So they were actively seeking this connection to the divine, but they weren't doing it in a Jewish way. And I thought that was so strange. Why? Where were the gaps? What was missing? So I said, I'm going to go figure this out. Of course, they all thought I was super religious anyway, because I knew a couple of blessings. But I went off, and I went first to the Reform congregation down the street from my house, which is Shereth Israel. If you've ever been to San Francisco, it is one of the most amazing, amazing pieces of architecture. The reason I went there is because they offered free tickets to starving artists. That's me. And I spent my entire high holidays staring up at their ceiling, which is like an illuminated manuscript. It's amazing. And then I went back to them, because they were the only Jewish connection I had in San Francisco. And I said, I want to learn. And they said, great. We have this group of people who come every Shabbat. Some of them have been coming for 30 years with their Starbucks coffee, or whatever coffee was 30 years ago. And they come and they study Torah. And I was floored. I'd never experienced anything like this. It was amazing. I was like, okay, this is good. This is a good start. And then I got involved with a renewal congregation, and they did that crazy dancing thing, just like my spiritual dance community. I was like, this is great. And I got involved with a, I was learning Kabbalah from a Chabad rabbi, and that was amazing. And I was working at a conservative shul. That was about as close as I was willing to get to a conservative shul. I grew up in a conservative synagogue. So that was about as close as I could get back to my roots at that point. And I just went from zero engagement to full on. And at some point, I had this epiphany or a conversation with God that said, you need to go to Israel. If you're going to really engage in this conversation, you need to go to Israel. So I went. I took myself to Israel. Never heard of Birthright. Didn't go to Birthright. I just rented a room in an apartment and went. And like Hansel and Gretel, I had a map and a notebook and a pencil. And they dropped me off at 1 a.m. at this apartment. And in the morning, I set off for the Kotel. And I went in search of the Kotel. And I got there. And I remember sitting in front of the Kotel being like, I don't feel anything. But then I just sat with the thousands of other people who had prayed there and the other generations and went, oh, I get it. And that was actually the beginning of my journey to become a rabbi. And I went into Pardes to become a Jewish educator and said, I don't want to teach in middle school, I don't want to be in the Midwest, and I don't want to be at a conservative synagogue. So I ended up in Cleveland, teaching at a middle school, at a Schechter day school. But it really was, again, kind of like a homecoming back to our roots, back to my roots. So I want to go back to this idea of that we don't plan, that we try to plan, and that God has other plans for us. This week's Parsha is Tazria. And Tazria is all about leprosy and stuff. And I'm working with a lot of B'nai Mitzvah students. And so I have this B'nai Mitzvah student. He's like, I just don't get it. I don't relate. And a lot of the times this will go to Miriam and to gossip. And he's like, I don't gossip. This isn't my life. And I said, okay. So what do you relate to? And he said, I kind of understand that idea of being separated. And if there's any point in history where the world completely gets what they're talking about when you go into isolation, we were in Israel. I know the Hebrew word for quarantine, right? We totally understand what it means to be separated, to be isolated. And so he and I talked about what are the lessons that we drew out of this time? And what are the lessons that the Torah was providing for us? Because the Torah completely planned for this, right? The Torah knew that we, in our lives, maybe not a pandemic, but there might be a time when we need to be separate, that we need to find ourselves a space apart. These last 3 years have been extremely challenging for our communities. There's no doubt. But there are also some really beautiful things that I got to experience, and maybe you did too. I got to hear birds again. I got to hear a world without the constant hum of traffic. I got to spend time with family and friends in ways that I hadn't in a long time. We're going to have to, as we come back out of this, re-understand what it means to be in community. And I hope that as we do, we also take some of those lessons with us. And we remember what it feels like to walk in the world and hear the birds. So that is my blessing, that for each of us, that we have a moment coming out I'd like to say coming out of the pandemic. I don't know. I have also started saying I did not predict a pandemic. I did not predict, because we were in Israel, and we were only supposed to be there for 4 months, and we ended up staying for 2 years because of the pandemic. So I had told my husband, I did not predict this, I promise. But I hope that as we move to whatever the next phase is, that we can take some of the beauty that was also there with us and keep those memories as well. Thank you all so much. Go ahead. One more thing. I just want this was in my notes, and I didn't look down my notes, and I just want to say thank you so much for the Torah Fund. This is really important. Because without you, I would not be here. So this is really, really important. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Cheryl. I'll be sure to tell them why it's so important. So you're the beautiful reason why we raise money for people to go for the rabbinate. And thank you for sharing your journey. Really appreciate it. So, okay, 1 second. What's the program say? It says, I'm on. What do you know? Here goes. Fasten your seatbelts. Okay, so for more than 100 years, conservative Judaism has been one of the major streams of Judaism in North America and more recently in Israel and around the world. It is the third largest Jewish religious movement worldwide, estimated to have close to 1.1 million people. Conservative Judaism represents a unique combination of Jewish tradition and responses to contemporary issues. It is committed to the continuity of our tradition's beliefs and practices, along with the engagement of our society and culture, practicing flexibility in their interpretation of halakha. The rabbinical school at JTS could be considered a modern yeshiva, where students study classical texts in an egalitarian setting. Devoted to Jewish learning and practice, here students learn to be transformative Jewish leaders. At the Ziegler School of Rabbinic Studies, which was founded in 1996, it was founded as a full-fledged program of rabbinic ordination conceived to train a new generation of conservative rabbis to address the spiritual needs of a changing North American Jewry. The academically and spiritually rigorous rabbinic program is dedicated to training conservative rabbis who are versed in Jewish texts, committed to Jewish traditional practice, and who can transmit the beauty and richness of Judaism to others. To date, Ziegler has ordained 217 rabbis, 79 of which are women, and 7 more will graduate this May, 4 of which are women. Whereas previous generations might have committed to Jewish life out of obligation or tradition, Ziegler's philosophy espouses that today's and tomorrow's Jews will join our community only if we can show them how Jewish life can enrich their lives and touch their souls. Our graduates are prepared to energize others religiously, spiritually, and intellectually, and to model the ideas of traditional Judaism in a contemporary world. We are here this afternoon to honor Barbara, who from her entrance into our community supported our Torah Fund campaign, which started in 1942 as a scholarship fund. In 1963, it merged with another campaign raising funds to provide housing for undergraduate students. And so a special projects campaign emerged, identifying and raising money for special needs. Before I describe the current special project campaign, which Marcy did touch on, I want to share with you the following. From the Orthodox to the renewal movements, more than 1,500 women have been ordained across the Jewish world in the past 50 years. A major challenge for female rabbis today, and many American women who have demanding professions, is that of balancing family life and their careers. In addition, problems of sexual harassment have plagued female rabbis since they were first being ordained. With frequent surveillance and commentary about how they dress, many have also reported verbal, physical, and sexual aggression by male rabbis, board members, and even congregants. Today, the non-Orthodox movements are paying new attention to these incidents of misbehavior directed at female rabbis and rabbinical students. Currently, the conservative movement's rabbinical assembly is in the process of conducting its own study on sexual misconduct. And last fall, for the first time, the RA began publishing the names of rabbis sanctioned for their ethics breaches, shifting the culture of secrecy that until now protected rabbis guilty of sexual improprieties. In 2018, Rabbi Cheryl Peretz at the Ziegler School initiated a new professional skills program designated to address issues of gender bias and sexual intimidation. The current special project campaign started in 2020 by Women's League and is called Creating New Spaces, the goal of which, as Marcy said, is to raise $200,000, which is divided by the East Coast and the West Coast campuses. At JTS, students living in the new undergraduate residence hall will have a state-of-the-art Women's League study space. And for Ziegler, the money raised will be endowed so that the special course implemented by Rabbi Peretz, to be named Women's League Institute on Gender Bias and Harassment, will help students recognize instances of bias and harassment and how to handle them, whether in the workplace, synagogue, summer camp, or wherever their rabbinic work takes them. Whereas creating new spaces is an important project, it is equally important to reach our financial commitment to our general Torah Fund campaign. When it comes to making charitable donations, our hearts are pulled in many directions, with many worthy and important organizations that need financial support. And we are challenged as to where we should allocate our resources. But as Vice President of Torah Fund, I ask you to consider the importance of ensuring the future of conservative Judaism through our Torah Fund campaign, which supports scholarships and programming at the 5 Masorti Institutes of Higher Learning. And on your tables, there is a picture frame that lists all the 5 seminaries, which was created by our Susie Katz. These institutions are educating those who will be hired as rabbis, cantors, scholars, educators, Jewish camp directors, chaplains, Hillel professionals, and more. These are the people who guide and teach, inspire and uplift, counsel and console. They are engaging in these positions to support the continuation of Jewish life. The last 2 years have been challenging for so many reasons. Conducting the Torah Fund campaign during this time has been difficult, but we were challenged even before the pandemic because our temple membership has diminished and its population is aging. Many of our longtime donors have significantly had to reduce their contributions, and many of our committed sisterhood women have passed away in recent years, including Doris Goodman, and I thank Ernie for continuing to give her gift in her memory, Julie Wynn, Shirley Moore, and the champion of Torah Fund, B. Reynolds. And I hope you are all able to watch the video tribute to B. Reynolds. She always wore her Torah Fund pin, so strangers would inquire as to what it symbolized. Her commitment to Torah Fund, JTS, and Ziegler in particular, was so passionate and so far-reaching, as exemplified by the time she successfully solicited her non-Jewish podiatrist to give at, get this, the $600 level. So if you haven't watched it, please go back and watch it. The students at the 5 seminaries are the beneficiaries of the Torah Fund campaign, and we here at Adat Ariel are the indirect beneficiaries of the Torah Fund campaign. To date, we have raised $19,000 of our $40,000 commitment. We're almost halfway there, and there's 2 more months of the campaign. For our future and that of our children and grandchildren, please consider increasing your gift, or giving it if you haven't already, to compensate for those contributions we have lost. Your gift to Torah Fund will help strengthen Jewish education and ensure the vibrancy of Jewish people for decades to come. B'yachad, together, we can make a difference. On the tables are envelopes behind the picture frame with pledge cards, if you want to call them. And if you could fill them out and then put them back in the envelope, that would be great. I want to thank you for coming to honor Barbara and for supporting the Torah Fund campaign. Now. Julie, would you like to come up, please?
So I'm excited because I get to introduce my mommy. And if you've been around Adat for a minute, you know that when there comes the opportunity to give somebody some much, much deserved kavod or a tribute, that there are certain ways that I prefer to do that. So, let's honor Barbara today for her service to WOA. Her heart is true, and she'll beat you at Pan and Maj. And if you needed support with bookkeeping or on Excel, you would feel the jobs would all be done so well, 'cause she loves this whole chevre. Let's honor Barbara today. Drove from New York to CA, drove all by herself the whole way. She had a goal, no more snow, it was time to go. She strives to give in service, and she values this community. She might not see why she was picked as honoree, but she gives us life, so hey, let's honor Barbara today. So now let's say l'chaim, please raise your glass high with me, and you will see the biggest hug will be from me, our Chaye Olam honoree. Let's honor Barbara today. My wonderful mother, Barbara Vaccai.
Thank you. That was great, Julie. Thank you so much. Okay, so down here we have her certificate and her gift. So
Do you want to stay up here when I give it to you?
you can stay up here.
You can stay up.
Now Rabbi Schuldenfrei is going to present Barbara with this.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, you can come up here, sure. So first of all, good afternoon, everyone, and I bring greetings from my wife, Rabbi Deborah Schuldenfrei, who has a very good reason not to be here this afternoon, because right about now she's on an El Al flight that's on its way to Israel with 18 sixth graders. We'll talk about that more in a moment, and the oh my gosh is... And so when she lands, I imagine that she's going to call and say that the flight went well, and she's going to ask how I'm doing. Am I feeding the kids? Am I keeping the house clean? And am I dressing nicely? And I'll tell her, actually, for my first event, I dressed to match the tablecloths. We were at the airport this morning, for that trip. And it was very emotional. The kids were all gathered, and they started singing. and I was schmoozing with the El Al ticket agent, this young Israeli woman, and she was kind of new to the job, maybe a few years she'd been on it. And when she pointed over to the kids, she said, "You know, I miss this," pointing at the kids singing. I think the same could be said for all of us today. We miss this. We miss this, how good it is for us to be back together. The kids, when they were singing, the rabbis there, including my wife, led them in a round of songs, including David Melech Yisrael. And it got me thinking about David Melech Yisrael, like in the middle of LAX, in the middle of the international wing of the airport. There are the kids, and when they started singing this, you actually saw the Israeli kids, the Israelis who were on the El Al flight getting emotional as well. The kids were waving Israeli flags, and they were really getting into it. And I thought about that. David Melech Yisrael, like what makes thousands of years later, when we have a moment of joy, what makes us sing about King David? And I think actually that David represents more than just David. He represents something that starts well before that, generations before that in his family. And it really begins with this woman named Nomi, who is an Israelite, but she marries a Moabite. And she's a stranger in a strange land. And her sons pass away, and her husband passes away. So she is left as a widow, and she also has two daughter-in-laws. One's name is Ruth, and they also lose their husbands. And this interesting thing happens. Nomi says, "It's time for me to go home." She wants to return to the land of Israel. And she expects that her daughter-in-laws, now no longer married to her deceased sons, would also return. One of them does. But Ruth says, "No, no, I'm with you." And at that moment, Jewish history changes, because what Ruth does defines how our people respond to adversity. Ruth could have turned around and gone on her merry way. But she said, "You know what? My purpose in life extends beyond the pleasures that I can see from my own eyes. I understand commitment that runs deeper than what I can see or what I can enjoy." And she says, "No, no, I'm with you, Nomi." And Ruth goes back to Bethlehem with Nomi, and there she invests in community. She invests in people. She invests in building a life not only for herself, but also a life for the people around her. And of course, Ruth, who is she? The great-great-grandmother of King David. When you invest in people, when you make a long journey and you invest in community, it's regal and it's worthy of blessing. And I thought about this with you, Barbara. You are someone who, I can't sing it to the Golden Girls tune, but took a long journey, not really sure what was in front of you. And what did you do when you got here? You invested in community. You invested in people and relationships. The first one to volunteer, the first one to step in at the gift shop, the first one to step in as a treasurer, the first one to step in to help the JLC. You are someone who understands the importance of rooting yourself in a new place in order to offer blessing to the community. And that's why we stand here today, honoring you and celebrating who you are. So as these kids this morning sung of David Melech Yisrael, this afternoon, we sing about you, Barbara. We sing about you and your blessing to this community. And as David brought about blessing for us, you bring about blessing for this community. And so with that, it is our pleasure to present you with this well-deserved award. Oh, I'm taking it out. I'm sorry.
You can have the bubble wrap.
There you go.
Oh, thank you so
Mazel tov. Mazel tov. Oh yeah, hold up the award. It's a beautiful certificate. I was supposed to take it out of the plastic. Oh wait, let them go first. Yeah, and then I'll get it for the second one. Yeah, there we go. Okay. And actually, maybe before Barbara, it's special to be here together. And just like that LL ticket agent noticed. Cantor, can we sing the Shechianu together? Yeah, come on. Yeah, of course. So let's all stand up. And if you're comfortable, put your arm around someone close to you. And at a time when we've had such disconnection, which was what soon-to-be Rabbi Stone was talking about, yes, we had a chance to enjoy the birds, and hopefully we'll continue to enjoy that. But we're also now having a chance to enjoy one another, and that is blessing worthy.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam sheheyanu vekimanu vehigianu lazman hazeh. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam melech haolam sheheyanu vekimanu higianu lazman hazeh. Amen. Mazel tov. Are you going to speak to us? Okay.
Yeah, good.
Okay, your remarks too. And this is a
sorry.
little something extra.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. I've never spoken to a microphone like this. Oh, okay. I have to speak up? Okay. Better? Okay. Thank you so much, Amy, Cheryl, and everyone who came today to share this special day with me. I especially want to thank my daughter, Julie, for her words today and for introducing me to the Adat Ariel community. I'm truly honored to be included with the list of past recipients of this award. Many of you are my friends and women I consider to be role models. I feel truly blessed to know you. In looking back at what I've done for Adat and with other endeavors and giving of myself, I feel as if I can attribute it to the way I was brought up and simply imitating the life I saw my mother live. We moved from the Bronx, New York to Buffalo when I was about a year and a half old, leaving behind the small number of relatives we had. Family gatherings took place over school vacations when we would drive to the Bronx and over summer vacation when my grandparents would spend time with us in Buffalo. I grew up in a very traditional home where my dad worked and my mom stayed home and took care of the house and my older brother and me. She did try working part-time out of boredom when I was in school all day, but it was very short-lived. Mom had to find ways to fill her time, so with suggestions of neighbors and then new friends, she joined organizations like Hadassah, and B'nai B'rith in the Denver Home for Asthmatic Children. My memory of my mom's role in these organizations was in fundraising efforts where she used her talents for writing parodies and staging productions. My mom's writing partners were her close friends, Annette and Fran. So along with my mom, Toby, they wrote under the acronym of FAT, which was created from the first initials of their names. Besides the entertainment value of these productions, it reinforced the notion that free time should be used for volunteer work. And that's how my mom spent part of her days while my brother and I were in school, and some evenings too, along with mahjong, canasta, and bridge. When I was a new mom and Julie was about 6 months old, my Buffalo girlfriends invited me to join their volunteer work with Carrie, the Children's Asthma Research Institute and Hospital. This was the successor organization to Denver Home, where my mom had raised funds. In addition to a weekly bowling league, we fundraised via a cookbook and an annual art auction. And the same message was woven further into my brain. You have free time, so you volunteer and raise money. Fast forward 3 years, and I found myself relocating to Jacksonville, Florida. My new friends, many of whom I met through our temple, again encouraged me to join them in their volunteer work. This time it was Women's American Ort and all of the fundraising activities in which it was involved. It was a wonderful way to meet new people and to raise money for such a worthwhile worldwide organization. Even now, Women of Adat participates in Ort's annual honey sales that leads up to Rosh Hashanah. I went through a period when I was working full-time in Buffalo, finishing college at night, and then ultimately moving to the Hudson Valley of New York. During that almost 35 years, when I didn't do volunteer work via my membership in organizations, I still found time to work with Jewish Federation and the United Way in some way. I ultimately moved here in the fall of 2014 when the 3,000 miles between Julie, Jason, and I was not satisfactorily bridged with just a once or twice a year visit. I attended Kol Nidra services a mere 5 days after I arrived in Reseda and loved the congregation immediately. My first memory is of every woman I met who asked me if I played mahjong. I spent about 9 months getting acclimated, finding my way around the valley, and quickly discovered I had too much time on my hands. One day, Julie sent me a text with a picture of the little notice that hung in the gift gallery window asking for volunteers. I called the number and left a message for Christy Costin, and about 2 weeks later, I was there training with Karen Gale, learning how to use the sales screen and register in the front of the store. I also spent some time training with Joette Labinger before I started manning the sales chair on Mondays between 12:30 and 3:30. Besides learning the merchandise and selling, I loved meeting so many new people and making new friends. During my Monday shifts at Gift Gallery, I got to know Beverly Barrick, Patty Bregman, and Faye Hoffman-Buckner of blessed memory. I'm grateful for the 2.5 years I knew Faye and wish it could have been longer. Early in 2017, when Faye knew she could no longer handle the hours at Gift Gallery, I was asked to take her place. She left me some brief notes, and with those I managed to learn the inventory system, process new merchandise, and run reports. I knew I could never fill Faye's shoes, but did my best until Gift Gallery closed at the end of 2018. While working at Gift Gallery, I also worked alongside Julie Wynn of blessed memory. I knew she always had the Sisterhood checkbook with her and was forever dropping off payments to people. Other than that, I was unaware of the workings of Sisterhood, now Women of Adat. But in January 2019, when Julie's health was failing, Julie Berg asked me to take over the treasurer's position of the Sisterhood board. I always fancied myself to be a numbers person and gladly accepted the role. Julie Berg was a tremendous help getting the ledgers set up on my laptop and coaching me with the specifics. But after the closing of Gift Gallery, I had too much time to kill and made that fact known to Eric Nicastro. So over the year, I spent time in the administrative and rabbinic offices doing whatever anyone needed. I filed papers for 2 different human resource managers and shredded boxes of obsolete files. I spent hours in the mailroom sorting out old filing cabinets that Patrick brought up from the basement, again shredding hundreds of expired documents. I worked in the basement of the rabbinic office helping Bonnie Gellis catch up on months of filing. I assisted the controller and staff accountant, Marina Natalia Resnick, entering payments into members' accounts on ShoalCloud. In the fall of 2019, I started volunteering at the JLC on Tuesday, loving my job title of office mom. And working for your daughter has its perks. One of my favorite jobs for the past 8 years has been the compilation of the Mishloa Minot routes that Julie programs. Whatever job was available, I jumped at the chance because I loved being busy and helping Adat Ariel. I think my mom would have been proud that I had discovered good use for my time. When I found out last October that I had been selected to receive the Chaye Olam Award, I was speechless. I thought of the women who had received this honor before me, and I felt that I hardly measured up. What I've done for Adat, and specifically the women of Adat, is something that was very natural to me. I remembered what my mom did for so many years and simply felt that I was following in her footsteps. I thought it was just something that I should do. I'm deeply touched and grateful for this honor and happy I could share it with so many of you today. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Barbara. This definitely is a well-deserved honor, and we're glad that you could join the other women who were previously honored.
So much. Thank you, Amy.
And thus concludes our Torah Fun Tea for 2022. So thank you for coming. You want to say something? Thank you for coming and honoring Barbara and supporting Torah Fund.